Understanding New Jersey's Universal Waste Rules. Topics to be covered. What is universal waste? Waste streams regulated under the Universal Waste Rule. Requirements for universal waste handlers, and best management practices. Universal waste is a specific hazardous waste stream that the U.S. EPA and states designate by rule to be a universal waste. Universal waste allows for alternative management options for these specific hazardous waste streams. Only the waste streams identified in the Universal Waste Rule may be managed as universal waste. Why universal waste? The EPA criteria. It's generated in similar quantities by businesses, industry, and consumers. It can be found in the municipal solid waste stream. It routinely fails the hazardous waste test. It can negatively impact solid waste operations, and when properly managed, presents low risk in the collection, storage, and transportation of these wastes. The U.S. EPA adopted its Universal Waste Rule in 1994 under RCRA and can be found at 40 CFR Part 273. New Jersey adopted its rule in 1996 under the Solid Waste Recycling Regulations and can be found in NJAC 26A-7. Each state may choose to adopt additional waste streams provided it meets EPA's criteria. Unlike hazardous waste, universal waste does not have to be stored in a designated hazardous waste accumulation or storage area. Universal waste is not counted toward the monthly hazardous waste generation amounts. Universal waste does not have to be transported by a licensed hazardous waste transporter using a hazardous waste manifest. Federally listed universal wastes include batteries, mercury-containing devices, pesticides, and hazardous lamps. New Jersey also includes consumer electronics, oil-based finishes, and aerosol cans. New Jersey's recycling regulations identify 4 classes of recycling facilities. Universal waste goes to Class D recyclers. Some types of universal wastes. Batteries. Batteries are devices consisting of one or more electrically connected electrochemical cells that are designed to receive, store, and deliver electric energy. Mercury-containing equipment uses elemental mercury sealed in an ampule or other container as a functional component, such as mercury switches, thermometers, or thermostats. Atlantic Cape has eliminated the use of mercury-containing equipment at its campuses. Lamps are bulbs or tube portions of an electric lighting device, such as fluorescent, high-intensity discharge, neon, mercury vapor, high-pressure sodium, and metal halide lamps. Pesticides are any spent or unused pesticide destined for disposal. Consumer electronics are appliances used in the home or business that include circuitry, such as components and subassemblies of the electronic products, including computers, printers, copiers, VCRs, and televisions. If a consumer electronic is classified as non-hazardous, the consumer electronics can be managed as solid waste or universal waste. Oil-based finishes are paint or other finish that may exhibit a hazardous waste characteristic or contain a listed hazardous waste, must be in the original packing, such as oil-based paints, lacquers, stains, and aerosol paint cans. Latex paint is classified as a non-hazardous waste, therefore is not a universal waste. Aerosol cans. Currently in New Jersey, if an aerosol can contain a propellant with a material other than an oil-based finish, then it must be managed as a hazardous waste. Examples could be a spray lubricant or a spray contact cleaner or degreaser. Once the lubricant or contact cleaner spray can be deemed a waste, it must be managed as a hazardous waste. Under this scenario, the NJDEP considers puncturing the lubricant or contact cleaner spray can as treatment of hazardous waste, so it is not permitted outside of a treatment, storage, and disposal facility. Atlantic Cape is not a TSD facility. Conversely, if the aerosol can contains an oil-based finish, including oil-based paints, lacquers, or stains, it can then be managed as universal waste where puncturing is still not permitted outside of a TSD facility. However, if an aerosol can becomes empty through normal use and contains less than 3% by weight of the can's capacity, then it is considered empty under the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, RCRA, and is no longer regulated as a hazardous waste. What is a universal waste handler? A generator of universal waste, or the owner or operator of a facility that receives universal waste from other universal waste handlers, accumulates universal waste, and ships universal waste to other UW handlers, to a destination facility, or to a foreign destination. Atlantic Cape Community College is a universal waste handler. There are two types, small quantity and large quantity. Atlantic Cape is a small quantity universal waste handler. A small quantity handler accumulates less than 11,000 pounds or 5,000 kilograms of universal waste combined at any given time. All UW handlers must label and mark UW containers and materials properly. They must accumulate UW within 1 year, maintain records to prove the material was accumulated within 1 year, and ship off-site UW to another handler or a destination facility. All UW handlers must contain and clean up all UW releases and spills, determine resulting release spills are a hazardous waste and manage that appropriately, and may export UW to foreign destinations and comply with portions of 40 CFR 262. Small quantity handlers are allowed to remove mercury ampules from mercury-containing devices and demanufacture consumer electronic products. They must inform employees of proper handling and emergency procedures. Small quantity handlers also have very limited reporting requirements. Handlers in destination facilities must label and/or mark UW containers or items properly. Markings must be legible, visible, and clear. It's recommended that the accumulation start date be put on the label, and pesticides must have the original label affixed to it, along with the UW marking universal waste pesticides or waste pesticides. Packing must be structurally sound, adequate to prevent breakage, such as with lamps, must remain closed while in storage, compatible with the contents of the waste, must not show evidence of leakage or spillage, and containers that do not meet the requirements must be overpacked. Here is an example of properly labeled and overpacked items. Here is another example of properly labeled universal waste lamps and universal waste batteries, and more properly packed fluorescent light bulbs. Here is an example how not to store your used fluorescent light bulbs. And yet another example of how not to store your UW lamps. Here you can see that the packing is uncovered and shows signs of leakage. Here we have consumer electronics that are not properly marked. Consumer electronics that are not marked and not covered. Basically a disaster area of consumer electronics. An example of properly labeled and packaged consumer electronics. An example of proper labeling for consumer electronics, and you'll note that the accumulation date is listed on the label. Here is another example of proper labeling for universal waste. Accumulation times. Universal waste may be accumulated for no longer than 1 year from the date the universal waste is generated. The simplest way to comply is by marking the container and equipment with the accumulation start date, which is the most accurate, and maintain manifests, bills of lading, or invoices showing proof of shipment off-site. Universal waste transported off-site must comply with U.S. DOT requirements. Universal waste sent to a Class D recycling center or handler does not have to be transported by a New Jersey licensed solid waste and hazardous waste transporter. However, universal waste sent to a RCRA TSD facility must be transported by a New Jersey licensed solid waste hazardous waste transporter. Some best management practices for the handling of universal waste include planning, designating an accumulation area, clear signage, training of employees, and record retention. To summarize, universal waste is still hazardous waste, but is subject to reduced management requirements. Universal waste in New Jersey are batteries, pesticides, mercury-containing devices, hazardous waste lamps, consumer electronics, oil-based finishes, and aerosol cans. Universal waste handlers are generators and accumulators of universal waste. Recyclers of universal waste are regulated as Class D recycling centers, and you must develop best management practices for your facilities using universal waste rules as your guide. If you have any questions regarding universal waste handling, please contact Mary Simpson, the Compliance Officer, at msimpson@atlanticcape.edu. Thank you. And remember, no dumping of universal waste.